Thank you very much for visiting my channel and clicking on this video. My name is Sean from McFarlane Properties down in Cape Town. And today this video is going to discuss whether now is a good time to sell your property or whether you should rather wait. There's so much going on in the world right now, it's sometimes a little bit difficult to understand or to decipher whether now is a good time to make a move or not. And so what I'm going to do in this video is just give some guidance, some tips, and things that you should be looking out for to help you make a decision on whether it is actually a good time to sell. At the end of the video, I'll also be going through a few reasons why it might not be a good idea to sell. So keep watching till then, and hopefully that will give you some really good insight in your decision-making process. Before we get into it, if you find this video of some value, please hit the like button, and if you'd like to be kept up to date on happenings in Cape Town and the property market in and around Cape Town, then hit the subscribe button and hit the bell to be notified for when a new video drops. And as always, if you or somebody you do know is thinking of making a move or selling, I'd love to have a chat. I'd love to ask you some questions, get some sense of what you're looking at doing, and offer some guidance in terms of what your options are. You can find my details below in the description. You can hit the link to send me a WhatsApp, or you'll find my email address and telephone number there to either send me an email or give me a phone call. Okay, is now a good time to sell or not? Let's get into it. So I think the first point that I'd like to make is that if you're buying and selling in the same market, so you sell your property and then buy a new one, there's really very little impact in terms of pricing. So you typically will buy for a similar price to what you sell for. Obviously, if you're upgrading a little bit, you might buy for a little bit more, and if you're downgrading a little bit, you might buy for a little bit less. But the impact on price, in other words, price going up or down, is going to be negligible because you are buying in the same market. If you decide to sell and you wait to buy, that could impact you negatively or positively. So if you decide to sell now and you sell at a point where prices are at their peak and you wait to buy and prices happen to go down, it means that you're paying less for that next property, essentially. And you're essentially keeping money in your pocket. If it goes the other way though, if you sell now and you wait to buy and prices go up, then you're going to have to add more in to purchase that next property, and you're going to be slightly out of pocket. As I said though, if you're buying and selling at the same time, those factors don't really come into play. So when you are looking at making a move or selling a property, it's very important that you do have a game plan and you have an understanding of what it is you're trying to do. Trying to time the market and trying to sell at a point where you think, well, the prices are going to be at its maximum now, so I'm best off selling now, is never actually a good idea. That's akin to trying to decide what number or what color the ball's going to land on in roulette. It's essentially gambling. You could win out, you could do a good job, and with luck, come out better. But in all likelihood, you're going to come out in a worse off position. So I wouldn't recommend doing that. I would recommend having a look at the reason you're looking to sell. And if it makes sense to do so now in terms of your situation, then go ahead and do it. And if you're looking at buying again, go ahead and buy in the current market as well. I'm going to go through a few reasons that might make sense to go ahead and sell now, and then after that we'll look at some reasons why you should maybe look at waiting. So in some cases, selling is the best option no matter what the market is doing. The market could be going up or down, and given your situation, given what you're trying to achieve, selling might actually be the best thing to do. The first one of those would be a change in your financial situation. So an example of this might be where you may have taken another role, or your income may have changed and now you're not able to cover the home loan repayments. That might be a good reason to start looking at the sales process. The last thing you want to do is to land up in a situation where you start getting behind on your home loan repayments and you run the risk of a foreclosure on your property. In that case, the bank will sell the property for you. It'll impact your credit record rather severely, and you tend not to get the same value out of the sale of that property as you would have otherwise. So that is a case where you might want to look at a sale. It's not obviously an ideal situation for anybody, but rather than landing in a worse off situation further on down the line, take a hard look at your finances and decide, is now the right time to do this? Relocating is also always a good reason to look at selling your property. So if you're moving to another city or another area, maybe there's a job, maybe it's for schooling, maybe it's for another reason entirely, then that's always a good reason to look at selling. Typically, you need to be in the new place by a certain time, and it's always easier to manage the sale of your property when you are there. Of course, if you get a good real estate agent like myself, I can always help facilitate the process, and I've helped people sell who are all over the world, even though their property is in Cape Town. So as long as you've got a good real estate agent, it is manageable, but it does make the whole process easier if you are living at the house and you've got furniture and everything else, and you need to take some of that capital out to make the move and buy the follow-on house to make sure that the sale happens beforehand. So that's also another good reason to look at selling, is when you are relocating to another area. Of course, if you are in the fortunate position to hold on to the property and make your move and potentially use that property as an additional income generating opportunity, that's also a great option. But you, again, just need to assess your financial situation and whether that is applicable to you. The third reason you might look at selling is if you're needing to take some equity out of the property. So this might more relate to somebody who's maybe got a second property and you don't want to sell your current home. But you do need the equity for other investments, or maybe you're looking at setting up a business, or maybe harking back to point one, financial situations is slightly tight and you need some cash flow at the moment. Then looking at the sale of the second property is a good option. You can release some of that equity that's tied up in that property and use that to either invest in an opportunity that will give you a better growth than that property is giving you, or to just make sure that through that period that there is some financial difficulty, you can see yourself through. Another reason to look at releasing some of that equity is if you are buying another house. You may be looking at buying a bigger house and you want to use some of the money that comes from your current home to purchase your next one and use towards a down payment, or to reduce the home loan expenses over time. So that's another good reason to look at selling. If your financial position doesn't allow to keep the house, don't try to do it. You could put yourself under a lot of financial stress, and it could work out badly in the long run. Have a careful look again at your financial situation to make a decision on that next step. And then another reason to look at selling is right-sizing. So when we talk about right-sizing, it could be for a variety of reasons. You could be at a point in your life where your family is growing and expanding. Suddenly you've had another little baby and your house is no longer quite big enough to suit everyone or to live comfortably, in which case you might be looking at getting a bigger house. In that case, obviously have a look at the sale of your house to use for the ongoing purchase of the next house. You might be at the point in your life where you're thinking, well, the kids have left home, the house is a little bit too big, it's difficult to maintain, it's taking a lot of effort, and I'd like to have a smaller, more manageable home, in which case you'd look at selling the bigger property and taking the equity out of that to buy the smaller one. And what often happens in a situation like that is you are left with a little bit of extra, because you have made a lot of payments towards the home loan. In some cases, you might not even have a home loan anymore, and then you've got a little bit of additional equity to use elsewhere as well. So those are some good reasons that you might be looking at making a move or selling your current property. But there are some situations where if you are thinking of a move and the move isn't essential, maybe you're just looking at a lifestyle change, but you could stay in your current house for a little bit longer, that you might want to take a long, hard look at and decide, well, is now the right time to do it? So I'm going to have a look at some of those pointers that might indicate, well, now's probably not a good time to sell. So the first one is if you see interest rates rising. Now, what happens when interest rates rise? You typically find that as those interest rates go up, less and less buyers can afford properties like yours. And so you find that the buyer pool, the number of people looking for properties, tends to thin out a little bit. What that means is that all of a sudden, because the number of homes on the market tends to still be fairly similar to what it was before, the sellers are now competing for the buyer. And you tend to find in that sort of situation, sellers will drop their price a little bit more to conclude the sale because they are the ones that need to sell. They're making a move, they're relocating, whatever the case may be. And you tend to find that prices for houses tend to become a little bit softer during a period like this. So with rising interest rates, it normally isn't a great time to look at selling. Where we are at the moment, we do see a rising interest rate environment right now. They are coming from a very low base though. So interest rates dropped to an all-time low of over the last year or so. And we're back at a level where it was in about 2018 right now. So, and we are still seeing a lot of demand in the market at the moment. So this might strictly not apply right now, but certainly keep an eye on things. And if things do tend to escalate or are looking to escalate in terms of interest rate rises over the next 3 to 6 months, then it might be something to reconsider in terms of a sale of the property. The other thing to look out for is how many houses are actually on the market for sale. If you find that the number of houses are increasing, so there's a heck of a lot of houses on the market compared to what they were previously, it typically means that there's an oversupply of houses compared to the number of buyers that there are out there. And so you have a similar situation to point one. If people need to sell, they are now needing to compete for the buyer again, and they tend to drop prices a little bit more to get that buyer in through the door and to get an offer on the table. And what you find over time, prices for houses that sell tend to start reducing over time. So if there is a lot of houses on the market, then probably not a good idea to sell just then. That really hasn't been a massive impact right now in terms of our market. We are fairly stable in terms of the number of properties that are on the market, and it is seasonal as well. So in summer you do find that you do have more properties on the market, so you will find it uptick now, but it's not anything out of the norm that we haven't seen before. The third reason you might just sort of stop and consider before making a sale if you don't have much equity in your property. Now, what I mean by equity, that's the difference between the price you get for the property and the home loan that you have on the property. As an example, if you will get a price of R1 million for a property that you're selling, but your home loan repayment will be 950,000 Rand, that'll leave you around about 50,000 Rand equity, but you still have various selling expenses to pay off. That would be agent fees, that would be compliance certificate fees, that would be moving fees, and various other ancillary costs as well. The result is that you will be left with very little, if anything. So do consider, if you only have a little bit of equity in your house, the difference between what you might get from a sale and what the home loan value is, do consider whether that is the right time to sell or not. Can you hang on a little bit? Can you pay down that home loan a little bit more before you sell? But it does need to be taken into context with the reason that you are selling as well. So if you are relocating, if you do have some financial difficulty, if there's another reason that's quite urgent that you do sell, then have a strong look at your financial situation, really understand what the game plan is, and consider whether selling is the best option there. And the fourth option is if major renovations are needed to the house. So people buy houses based on comparatives. So they'll be looking at a number of other properties on the market and they'll be comparing it to your property. If your property does need a lot of renovation, then they are going to discount the price quite significantly for that. And the reason that the price gets discounted is, number one, obviously they're going to have to spend a fair amount of money to bring that house up to standard compared to the other houses they have been seeing. But the other thing is that there's risk now in doing that for them. There's time, there's effort, there's hassle, and so it becomes bigger than just the Rand value of actually doing the renovations. And when I talk about risk, I'm talking about, well, if we start taking on this renovation project, there might be additional things that come out of the woodwork that it's going to cost us more. You don't often hear of a renovation running to budget. In fact, they often run over budget, and that is the risk. That's the budget, and this is the amount that we've run over. That's essentially what the risk is. So you get discounted on that risk as well. And then, as I said, hassle and time is also something that's factored in. So you tend to get a larger drop in price than the actual Rand value of the potential renovation. So if the house does need significant renovations, and I'm not talking about just a paint or a neatening up of the lawn, or maybe some changing of some fixtures and fittings, that can be done fairly easily. I'm talking about major renovations, things that are more perhaps structural in nature. So reconsider whether you can wait and make some of those repairs yourself and add the additional value to the house. There are also some alternative options. We do work with some people who can come in and do the renovations for you, bring the house up to spec, and then there's a negotiation on what you would get after the sale versus what they would get after the sale for the investment. The end result is, though, that you typically do get more than you would have if you sold it as is, but you wouldn't get that full value. Obviously, the person's investing to share in that improved sale price. So if you are looking at that as an option and you think, well, maybe I can do a little bit better if I do partner with somebody like that, please get in touch. I'd be happy to connect you to those people and see if we can put you in a better situation. As I said, my details are down in the description. You can find my WhatsApp, email, and phone number there. And the last one is quite obvious, I think. If you're happy where you are, if you enjoy your space, if you enjoy your house, if it suits your needs, if there's no actual reason to move, if you're not relocating, if there's no financial implications to you staying, then why move? There's probably not a good reason to take that next step. And as they say, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. So if you're happy where you are, stay, hang around, stick with us. We'd love to have you. So I guess the bottom line, and to summarize all of that, there are quite a few factors to take into account when considering a move. There are some factors that determine whether you need to sell. There are some factors that determine whether now is the right time to sell or not, if it's not an absolute need. And what's important is that you get the right kind of guidance and advice. So if you are considering a move and if you are considering taking that next step in the property market, I'm happy to have a chat. No obligations from my side. Just have a chat, give you some guidance, ask you some questions that might help you to think through the process of making that move and come to a better decision. I've got a lot of information at my fingertips. I focus on the real estate market every day, and I'm happy to empower you with that information so that you make the best decision that you can. So reach out, and don't forget, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, and like the video if you found it useful. My details are down at the bottom if you are thinking of making a move. WhatsApp, email, or telephone, you can reach out to me on either one. And keep an eye out for the next video. Thanks very much for joining me. Cheers, bye.